The courtroom laughed. Not loudly, nothing so crude. It was the refined, poisonous chuckle of people who believed they were untouchable. The kind of laughter that doesn't echo, but stains. Judge Randall Keene leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking to my stained apron as if it were evidence itself. Does a waitress truly expect this court to believe she can manage millions of dollars? He asked. I didn't answer. Instead, inside my blazer pocket, I pressed record. They didn't know I used to stand exactly where their lawyers stood. They didn't know the woman who left me everything had planned this moment. Down to the insults, the smirks, even the judge. My name is Chloe Thomas, and I was 31 years old, standing alone in the 17th District Court of Travis County. I looked exactly how they expected me to look. Cheap charcoal suit. Fraying him. Hands red and raw from an 8-hour diner shift. The faint smell of coffee and grease clinging no matter how hard I scrubbed. The marks on my wrists, fresh, angry. Left by apron strings I'd tied too tight at 6 that morning. To them, I wasn't an heir. I was a mistake. My mother, Gwen, sat at the plaintiff's table in a $2,000 black dress. Pearls perfect, grief perfectly rehearsed. She didn't look at me. Only at the judge, nodding faintly, as if agreeing I was embarrassing her. Next to her sat my half-brother, Trent. Golden boy. 2 years older. Already bored. Already counting money he thought was his. Their lawyer, Caleb Rohr, stood and smiled like a man who'd already won. He held up a photo. Me behind the diner counter. Hair frizzed. Ketchup on my sleeve. Exhausted. Exhibit A, he said smoothly. The proposed executor in her natural habitat. The judge chuckled again. And my phone kept recording. Because what they didn't know, what none of them suspected, was that the apron wasn't proof of incompetence. It was camouflage. And the woman who taught me how to disappear had also taught me how to destroy people who underestimated silence. Her. To understand why I stood silent while a judge mocked my intelligence, you need to understand Evelyn Harrow. Evelyn was not my mother, though she was the only parent who ever truly shaped me. She lived alone in the Texas Hill Country, behind a rusted gate and a mile-long dirt road that disappeared into scrub oak and limestone. No neighbors. No photographs. No tiretigalas. Just land. A lot of it. I met her when I was 22, during the state finals of a collegiate debate tournament. I was loud back then, angry, desperate to be taken seriously. I argued like I was fighting for oxygen. Evelyn was one of the judges. After the round, she found me outside the auditorium, sitting on a concrete bench, hands shaking as I smoked a cigarette I didn't even like. She sat beside me without asking. You mistake noise for power, she said. That's common. I started to defend myself, but she raised a hand. You won, she continued. But you fight like you're trying to prove you exist. Learn to fight like you already know the truth. That day she made me an offer. She would pay for all of law school, tuition, housing, books, everything. In return, I would spend my summers working on her ranch. Not legal work. Manual labor. Fence repair. Clearing brush. And listening. My family made the choice easy. We weren't poor. We were beige. A subdivision where every house looked the same and appearances mattered more than honesty. My mother, Gwen, lived entirely through how things looked. My success was useful only if it made her look important. Straight A's? She bragged. Emotional support? She vanished. Trent, my half-brother, was worse. Always chasing the next scheme. Always convinced he was one deal away from greatness. Using other people's money. When I told them I'd been accepted to Harvard Law, Trent didn't congratulate me. That's expensive, he said. Who's paying? I have a scholarship. I lied. Good. My mother said. That'll look nice in the Christmas newsletter. That was it. Evelyn didn't teach law the way professors did. She taught conflict. During the summers, we fixed fences under a sun that burned thoughts right out of your head. Barbed wire bit into my palms. Sweat soaked through my clothes. When my hands shook from exhaustion, Evelyn would hand me a glass of iced tea and talk like she was discussing the weather. Most people can't tolerate silence, she told me once, staring out over the hills. They rush to fill it. And when they do, they tell you everything you need to know. She kept journals, dozens of them. Not feelings. Facts. Dates. Conversations. Numbers. Memory lies, she said. Ink doesn't. Never enter a room without a way to record it. I took that lesson with me to Harvard. I became invisible in class discussions, but unstoppable in preparation. I read footnotes no one else bothered with. I mapped arguments 3 steps ahead. Professors noticed. Judges noticed. After graduation, I joined Summit and Vail, one of the most aggressive litigation firms on the East Coast. I thrived. I handled cases involving assets worth hundreds of millions. I drafted motions that dismantled opposing counsel before they ever reached a courtroom. Partners stopped double-checking my work. They trusted it. And yet, when I went home for holidays, I shrank again. I wore jeans instead of tailored suits. I let Trent brag about his latest investment failure disguised as genius. I let my mother complain I looked tired, that I should smile more, that success wasn't attractive if it scared men. I'm just a junior associate, I lied. Mostly paperwork. Figures, Trent said once. You've always lacked killer instinct. I smiled and stayed quiet. Because Evelyn had taught me something else. Never reveal strength to people who would use it against you. Then 6 months ago, Evelyn called. Her voice sounded thin. Papery. She didn't say she was dying. She didn't need to. I took leave from the firm and flew back to Texas. She was smaller in bed, cancer having. Evelyn died 3 weeks later. Quietly. No press. No memorial service splashed across society pages. Just a private burial on her land, under a mesquite tree she'd planted herself decades earlier. And then the war began. My mother appeared at my apartment 2 days after the will was filed. She didn't knock. She stood in the doorway, eyes scanning my furniture, my clothes, my life, measuring how badly I had failed to become impressive. Why would she leave it to you? Gwen asked flatly, as if the question itself were an accusation. I didn't answer. Trent was more direct. He called it theft. She wasn't in her right mind, he said over speakerphone. She was old, sick, easily manipulated. I almost laughed. Evelyn Harrow had outlived 3 hostile takeovers, a corrupt county board, and 2 husbands who tried to outmaneuver her legally. Manipulated was not a word that applied to her. The lawsuit arrived a week later. Petition to remove executor due to incompetence. Not fraud. Not undue influence. Incompetence. Just like Evelyn predicted. I resigned from Summit and Vail the same day. Not because I had to, but because the disguise required commitment. I took a job at the diner Evelyn loved, the one on the highway that served pie with burnt edges and coffee strong enough to strip paint. I worked doubles. I learned names. I let grease stain my hands. I became exactly what they expected. When the court date was set, Evelyn's lawyer, her real lawyer, met me in a quiet office downtown. You ready? He asked. I placed my phone on the table. Recording enabled, I said. He smiled. Good. Because Judge Keene hates being challenged. He'll overstep. And Roar? I asked. Roar loves an audience, the lawyer said. He'll show off. Perfect. The night before the hearing, I listened to Evelyn's final voicemail for the 100th time. If they laugh at you, she said, you're winning. If they pity you, you're dangerous. And if they underestimate you. She paused, voice dry with amusement. There. The courtroom was packed. Even without a jury, it felt like every seat was watching me fail. Or so they thought. Roar smirked. Trent checked his watch again, and my mother adjusted her pearls like she was at a gala. Not a court hearing where her daughter's competence, or so they believed, was being questioned. Judge Keene cleared his throat, impatient. Miss Thomas, are you prepared to answer the questions before the court? I nodded, letting my arms fall loosely to my sides. Every motion, every breath, was deliberate theater. I didn't flinch. I didn't hesitate. I looked down once, as though gathering my courage, and let them assume they had frightened me. Roar opened his mouth. Your Honor, as we stated. I pressed the record button on my phone again, though it was already recording. The little red light was invisible, but the digital waveform in my mind danced like fire. Every word, every sneer, every implication would be captured. You assume incompetence, I said, voice soft but deliberate. The courtroom leaned forward. You assume that someone wearing an apron, or someone who sweats through a double shift, cannot understand fiduciary responsibility. You assume that my silence, my appearance, my life choices reflect ignorance rather than strategy. You assume wrong. A ripple went through the spectators. My mother's eyes flicked sharply toward me. Trent froze mid-chew. Roar's smirk faltered, but only slightly. I continued. The woman who left me this estate, Evelyn Harrow, did not see the world as you do. She knew value. She knew competence. She knew discretion. She knew that people underestimate the most dangerous adversaries when they are distracted by appearances. Judge Keene squinted. I let my hand brush my blazer pocket subtly, fingers finding the phone again. You have just witnessed my natural environment, I said, nodding toward the photo of me at the diner displayed in evidence. Yes, that was me. Exhausted. Stained. Invisible to those who do not see carefully. The courtroom was still. Even the air seemed heavier, as if it had paused to watch what would come next. Roar cleared his throat, his voice tighter now, forced. Your Honor, I raised a hand, calm but unyielding. Let the record show, Mr. Roar, that your arguments are based entirely on appearances and assumption, not fact. And the facts are what matter here. Judge Keene leaned forward, eyes narrowing. And the facts, Miss Thomas? I let a slow, deliberate smile curl on my lips. The facts, Your Honor, are simple. I have managed multi-million-dollar portfolios. I have executed complex litigation. I have overseen trusts worth more than any of you imagined. I am qualified. More than qualified. And I have proof. I tapped the folder in front of me. Every email, every ledger, every correspondence, every legal opinion. I have it all organized, dated, and ready for inspection. I have documented everything for over 5 years, knowing that one day, someone would try to discredit me based on a uniform or a moment of exhaustion. Today, I present the record of competence, not appearances. The courtroom was silent now. My mother's mask had fully cracked. Trent's smug confidence was gone. Even Judge Keene hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Roar tried again, voice wavering. But Miss Thomas, the estate is not mine to mismanage, I interrupted softly. It was entrusted to me by a woman who understood true value and true responsibility. Evelyn Harrow taught me that appearances can mislead, but diligence, skill, and preparation are the weapons of the competent. Today I wield them, and not in anger, but in truth. I stood, letting the red marks from the apron strings show clearly on my wrists. A silent reminder of every shift, every underestimated effort, every moment they thought they had me, every misjudgment they made. They documented it, thinking it mattered. I let them see that I was aware. That I remembered. Judge Keene adjusted his glasses. Miss Thomas, you've presented. The courthouse doors slammed behind me, echoing like a gunshot in the empty street. I could hear the distant hum of traffic, the honk of a horn, but it all felt muted. Inside, the world had shifted. I had shifted it. For years, I had been the quiet, overlooked, underestimated daughter. Today, I was neither. My mother's eyes followed me as I walked past her. There was disbelief there, yes, but also a flicker of something else, fear. She had built her entire life on optics, control, and narrative. And now she realized, with a shiver I knew she would never admit, that the story she had curated for decades was crumbling. Trent caught my gaze, but there was nothing to read there. No elegance, no superiority. Only the realization that the underdog, the waitress, the overlooked girl, me, had just beaten them at their own game. The humiliation they had tried to orchestrate, the carefully crafted image of incompetence, had backfired spectacularly. Outside, I leaned against the warm stone of the courthouse. The sunlight felt heavy, almost sacred, on my shoulders. For the first time in years, I allowed myself a breath that wasn't measured, a moment that wasn't calculated. I had earned it. I thought of Evelyn Harrow, the woman who had taught me to fight without noise, to document without sentiment, to prepare without fail. I had honored her lessons perfectly. Every insult, every snicker, every dismissive glance had been part of the record. Every moment of underestimation had been converted into ammunition. And it had worked. The media would spin their versions. Waitress wins multi-million-dollar inheritance. They would mock the apron, the frayed polyester, the coffee-stained sleeves. They would miss the point entirely. It wasn't about what I wore. It was about the truth, the preparation, the unassailable evidence that competence cannot be judged by appearances. I smiled. Let them talk. Let them underestimate me again. They would learn the hard way that I had spent a lifetime PR.